So, confession. I had a few problems trying to figure out what to make this video about. You see, originally my idea was to examine the idea of strong female protagonists, by looking into what was considered a benchmark for the time compared to what I considered to be the benchmark. But as I started playing these games again, and again, and again, my idea also evolved again, and again, and again. Fuck the gods! The subject that I decided on no longer became valid. I think part of that is because when you play a game for the second time, you tend to look at it from a different perspective. We take The Last of Us 2 as an example. My original playthrough, much like everybody else's, left me with a very sour taste in my mouth. We weren't able to achieve our main goal, and we weren't able to take vengeance for Joel. But playing this for the second time, I started to realize that there was a different perspective on the whole thing. That maybe the story isn't necessarily about vengeance or the circle of violence, but rather about loss and grief, and how each character approaches this concept. So why not join me? I have 2 games I want to analyze on this front, as well as 3 whole characters we can look at from this perspective. Without further ado, let's get started. Senua's journey is a bit of a tragic one. Growing up, she was ostracized for having a mental illness, this labeled as black magic and a curse by the gods. This resulted in an upbringing which was pretty abusive. Her father wanting to take complete control of her, seeking to exercise his twisted will in order to make sure she couldn't go out of bounds. Senua was alone. She had no friends. She had nobody to take care of her. Only the words of her father ringing hollow in her mind. But that all changed when she found somebody practicing their swordsmanship under a tree. His name? Dillion. She too learned how to fight with a sword after mimicking his movements for some time, and one day, they approached one another.
Oh, Zeno's daughter.
I have to go.
Wait. Who taught you to fight like that?
No one.
No one?
Well, I watched you, and...
You learnt all of that from watching me?
This becomes the first time that Senua feels any acceptance, and over time they grow a strong bond and eventually fall in love. Dillion over time gives her a great deal of self-confidence, enough so that she can revolt against her father, go out in the wilds and learn more about herself. Upon her return though, she discovers a village in ruin, and sadly the one person in this world that accepted her for who she was has been violently murdered.
You fought for love unspoilt by your darkness within. You fought for your dreams. Now there's no way to win.
This starts off Senua's journey of grief and loss. You see, growing up, she was taught the way of the gods. These teachings also meant that she was taught that Hela could be bargained with. Hela, the ruler of Helheim, taking Dillion's head where it is believed that the soul is kept. She makes her way to Helheim with the intention of either bargaining or fighting with Hela for Dillion's life. Her first confrontation with Hela ends badly. She's defeated quite immediately actually, hurled off the bridge and sent deep underground. We get a short snippet of everything she's going through at this point, her psychosis coming to life and marking her for her failures.
The gods. You're pathetic. Rotten. Cursed. What were you thinking? Did you really think you could win? How stupid can you be?
So stupid.
Everyone hates her. She's cursed.
The shadow hates.
Look at you. A warrior. Worthless. Weak. Pathetic. Go on. Feel sorry for yourself, because there is no one left to do that for you.
Everywhere.
Senua's journey is quite prevalent with moments like these. Moments of reflection, moments of her inner voices berating her for failures. And this isn't something that's reflected solely in the cutscenes. They're prevalent within the gameplay also, and they berate you every time you're hit or every time you can't solve a puzzle. Which means throughout the game and throughout her entire journey, the voices are constantly putting her down, making light of her circumstances and wanting nothing more than to act in self-preservation. Over the course of the game, you are brought to many different environments, each one telling a different story from Senua's past. You slowly start to receive insight as to how she was treated, how Dillion treated her, and most of all, her father's perception of her. This is most prevalent after you were defeated by Hela, and you have to go through the 5 different trials to resurrect a god sword. I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's called Gramra? Fuck it, I'm just going to call it by its English name, Wrath. Which is supposedly a Godslayer sword that she needs to defeat Hela. Senua's inward and outward reactions to all of these occurrences show that she isn't in the best mental place. Her grief over Dillion pushing her into depression, and her psychosis serving as an amplification for this. But how she deals with this is far more empowering than most protagonists. You see, the purpose of Senua's journey isn't exactly to put her down for not being able to defend Dillion, it's for her to learn acceptance. Dillion isn't the only figure she comes across in this game. She also comes across her mother, who was burned alive, because she too could also hear voices in her head. Her mother's face present in the deeper realms of Helheim, as well as in other places. Senua goes through the game, re-experiencing everything she had fought to repress. Dillion teaching her to open her senses, Dillion's displays of affection, her mother being burned alive, her abuse at the hands of her father. Over the course of this, it all culminates in a final confrontation, where each of the 3 memories are validated, each one acting as a revelation to break the facade she has built for so long, starting off by talking to her inner self, which acts as the personification for the Furies. The Furies making clear that they want nothing more than to survive. She then begins to have a flashback to her father, which then unlocks a memory regarding her mother being burned alive, and the real reason it happened. This empowers Senua even further, realizing not only that the abuse that she suffered was wrong, but that her father's twisted logic was that he was helping her with God's blessings.
I do understand. You cursed me with your own madness.
As a result, she goes into the final battle with the express purpose of winning. Now, I didn't want to talk about female empowerment, but this is one of my favorite moments in all of gaming. And I do kind of want to gush about it for a minute. You know you can't win against a god, you're human, right? But rather than let that stop her, and rather than let her father's words berate her even further, Senua goes on to say,
I can see through your darkness. You're a liar and a murderer. And if you really are Hela, then I have a sword here that can kill a god.
This is just flat out badassery and excellence at its finest point. And seriously, if someone's going to turn around and tell me that this isn't empowerment, then none of us know what is. She quite literally goes into the battle filled with determination, seeking to put her nightmares to rest, seeking to save Dillion, and seeking to defeat her memories. Looking at Hela, who is the spitting image of her mother, by the way, her source of fear this entire game, she decides now that she has to end her, defeat her, and win. My God. You fight an endless horde of Northmen, you fight the gods that you fought at the beginning of the game all over again. It's a powerful moment because within this final moment you are fighting the final set of demons that are haunting Senua's mind. And although she loses, she comes to realize that nothing could be done, that the words of the gods within her world are false, that Dillion will never come back, and that her condition is simply a part of who she is. The main twist of this game is that the psychosis brought this entire journey to life, and that instead what was really happening is that Senua was learning to let Dillion go. It's a weird moment where you find that the psychosis that she was experiencing almost helped her cope with what was going on, giving her a journey to go through, empowering her throughout that journey, and letting her know that everything is okay, that perhaps her loneliness isn't permanent, that she too can rise from the ashes and find her way forward. Senua to me is the best version of dealing with loss and grief throughout these 3 protagonists, her journey of self-discovery being one of acceptance, and her coming out more powerful for it. And who knows, the way the second game's trailer looks, it might just piss on everything I've just said. She may just turn into Ellie and become toxically vengeful, but for now at least, her journey remains the best of the bunch.
We have another story to tell.
My friend, go with her. This now will be your story to witness.
damn it. Okay, so here's a quick disclaimer. I'm not here to bash the game, though that could happen unintentionally.
You don't get to rush this.
I think everything that could possibly be said about the game has already been said. But as always, I'm here to examine the characters and examine how they cope with their circumstances. So, without further ado... Let's get started. Ellie is ridden with guilt in various ways. She not only has to cope with the fact that she survived when others didn't, that she is immune to the virus and others are not, but also that she was let go when Joel was killed. Joel's decision to kill Abby's father had come back to haunt him, in quite possibly the worst way, and this is the catalyst for Ellie's journey. Ellie's coping mechanism seems to be vengeance. And you know, honestly, I'm kind of a sucker for a vengeance story. Some of my favorite protagonists ever are arbiters of this entire concept, but it's the way Ellie deals with it that kinda gets on my nerves. Under most circumstances, I'm genuinely quite fine with somebody taking vengeance in the most over-the-top way possible. But the way Ellie does this costs her a lot. Her friends and what's left of her family. And I get it, loss and grief can make you do crazy things. But just look at some of this shit. Her actions lead to Jesse dying, lead to Tommy being physically injured permanently, almost leading to Dina's death, and then her obsession becomes so great that she leaves Dina behind, to which Dina does the same. And then throughout the game, she makes decisions based on this vengeance. For example, refusing to save Tommy because she wants to go straight for Abby's throat.
You heard them right, they're talking about Tommy.
We don't know that.
Who else is it gonna be?
If it is him, he'll be gone by the time we get there. Abby is where he'll be headed, so if we just
What if he's in trouble?
He can take care of himself.
Jesus Christ.
The best way to help Tommy is to go after Abby. You do this, I'm not saving your ass again.
This kind of mentality is kind of toxic. Flashbacks do reveal that she was indeed close to Tommy, frequently going out on patrols with him and bonding with him over gun skills. It doesn't add up to me in the slightest that she would disregard his life so quickly just for the sake of vengeance. The loss of Joel resulting in a great deal of toxicity being developed within her character. Using her encounter with Nora as an example, before ending her life she offers to make it quick, but Nora insults Joel to such an extent that Ellie decides instead to beat her into submission. Another example of this is when she confronts Owen and Mel, deciding to try and use a tactic that she found Tommy using earlier in the game, an interrogation technique which pits them both against each other.
You. Come here. Fucking get over here! Point to where she is on this map. And then you. It better fucking match up.
Side note, how did she think this was gonna work? Tommy had his hostages tied to chairs. Ellie's hostages were perfectly free. So of course they were gonna fucking retaliate. She wasn't ready to take on all this on her own. And perhaps the one redeeming factor here is that she does start to feel some regret for what she's done. Showcased more through her body language than through dialogue. In various cutscenes you start to see her shaking, her body showcasing her reactions to what she's done. Her speech also affected, she cannot get her thoughts together.
She's hiding out in this aquarium. Okay. Come on. Let's get you cleaned up.
You can see at this point that her decision for vengeance is starting to physically affect her. But this doesn't stop her. It all culminates in a final showdown at the theatre. Abby now deciding to take vengeance because of course Ellie took her friends away from her. Ellie's feelings of loss and grief now beginning to affect those around her. Not even in an emotional way, but more in a you're gonna die kind of way. So then maybe after this you'd think, you know, it should end here. Ellie has killed all of Abby's friends, and furthermore she now has that dream farm that her and Dina always spoke about. Raising a child together, they finally have the perfect life.
You're my only way to happiness. You're my everything.
Yeah, you were too hopeful. Tommy shows up, mentioning that he knows where Abby is. At first, Ellie makes the right choice. She doesn't want to lose Dina, and therefore she decides no, she's not going to go after her. But she has a flashback of not being able to make amends with Joel, and this just motivates her further. In the end, it culminates in a fight between her and Abby, a starved and very weak Abby, where, despite the desire to kill her, she doesn't do it. A divisive ending, to be sure, but I see it this way. Killing all of Abby's friends brought Ellie nothing. No peace, no moving on. And so in this moment, she no doubt learns that killing Abby will do nothing for her. It won't put the nightmares to rest. It won't stop the episodes, because Joel is never coming back. And no amount of revenge and no amount of death is going to fix that. It's rushed growth, but it's growth nonetheless. She heads back to the farm to find that Dina is gone. Because of course she is. Killing Abby would have only left Lev a bit more vengeful, and so this entire cycle would have just continued. Dina no doubt taking a chance at safety over remaining with Ellie. After all, she does have a child to protect now. Ellie's method of coping with Joel's death is pretty bad. Her assumption seems to be that as long as she kills everybody, then no one will come after her, disregarding completely the fact that these guys were part of a bigger group, and the slightest bit of communication between them would have resulted in her death. She was lucky to have survived, but I can't say the same about the rest of them. Poor Jessie. I understand why Ellie did what she did, but was it worth continuing if her friends were gonna die? She knew the consequences, but she followed through, and now she's left alone in the world. Immune, sure, but alone. I guess only time will tell where it goes from there. Okay. I have to talk about Abby now. As you can tell by my voice, I'm very exhausted, and trying to figure out Abby was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. You see, the problem is, when I first took a look at her character, I took a look at what she did to Joel first. And frankly, that's just not a good way to judge her. There was clear motive, there was clear reasoning behind why she wanted to do what she did. It's fucking everything else that she does in the game that's a bit weird to me.
You guys doing okay? Dating life's good.
For the most part, yeah, I mean, she can be really sweet.
Must feel nice after me.
Well, that badass exterior.
And don't misconstrue, I am as heartbroken about Joel's death as the next guy. But even you can't deny, at least from a character perspective, that makes a bit more sense compared to what she does later on. Get ready for my migraine moment. Without further ado, let's get started.
You stupid old man. You don't get to rush this.
Abby's form of guilt is a little progressive throughout the game, and a little erratic to say the least. At the start, her form of guilt comes in the form of not being able to protect her father. Clear and defined, it's established that her father was someone that she looked up to greatly. And any child with the kind of relationship that Abby had with her father would be shaken up by his death. Going into her story, this is the primary motivation for her vengeance on Joel. Unlike our other protagonists, her vengeance is fully fulfilled, her goal fully realized. But for whatever reason, this doesn't bring her peace. She still has nightmares over her father's death, doing some questionable things to try and cope. But her capacity for guilt and loss starts to evolve when she meets Lev and Yara, two kids from her opposing faction. They'd try to revolt in various ways and for various reasons. The extremism of the Seraphites no longer fitting the kind of lifestyle that they wanted. They meet once. Lev and Yara save Abby from being put on display like the rest of the Seraphites' victims, and together the three of them fight off a zombie horde. Escaping that, they make it to a secluded area, and Abby leaves, and she is trying to look for Owen, her friend, by the way. More than friends? I don't know what to label them. Anyway, her guilt for leaving them behind as Yara is injured starts to manifest itself in the form of her dreams. Where it used to be her father that she used to see, she now sees their bodies hanging. And I think this is where my questions start to set in slightly. Who were these kids that suddenly Abby felt the obligation to protect? I wasn't very sure. Originally, I had thought that she felt some guilt over Joel and decided that she needed to make up for it. Or maybe that the bonds of comradeship exist when you go into battle together. maybe they're just kids in this world and Abby sees it as her moral duty to protect them. Here's the thing, I don't actually know if it's any of those reasons or all of those reasons or whatever, because the lengths she's willing to go suddenly for these people are just strange. Abby asks Lev how many wolves he's killed, the wolves being her faction. We see later on that Abby is kind of popular with the wolves. Everybody knows her. And so any who were killed were no doubt her friends, right? So what is it about this kid that makes him so worthwhile in saving suddenly, if he too was responsible for the death of her friends? Abby explains later on that she's trying to lighten the load a bit, something to do with her feeling a load of guilt and her needing to alleviate some of it. But what is it that she feels guilt over? It couldn't be Joel, she doesn't have nightmares about Joel. And it doesn't make sense that she suddenly feels guilt over these kids. So then what? You know, I don't have a defined answer, but I have a mildly working theory. Probably not the best, but at least working. I think it was something that Owen said to her earlier, when he asked how he should cope. We already know Owen himself, and what he says means a lot to Abby. Regardless of their history, they have known each other for a very long time. Regardless of their weird relationship, they do have a bond. And I think this interaction kinda sets off the chain of events. Owen basically indicating that Abby did the wrong thing and is kind of a bad person. Hell, even Mel does the same when she figures out that Owen cheated on her.
What? He may fall for your little act with these kids, but I don't. There's nothing to fall for. Isaac's top scar killer suddenly had a change of heart? Nothing to do with Owen, right? I haven't always done the right thing. You're a piece of shit, Abby.
This is gonna sound a bit pathetic and probably oversimplistic, but I actually think that Abby's desire is to prove to herself that she might be a good person. That the reason she feels so guilty is because she feels she has done quite a bit of bad in her time, taking so many lives, for a purpose she doesn't quite understand herself. No doubt originally she saw it as self-defense or looking after her comrades, but suddenly she flips the script and suddenly wants to prove to herself that she's a good person, no matter the cost. Look, it's all good and well if you want to prove to yourself that you're good in some way, but did she really have to go about it this way? Deceiving her friends, robbing her own people, killing her own people that she has known for years? This is where some of the stupidity starts to sink in with her character. That although Lev symbolizes her desire to be good, she seems willing to betray everybody she ever knew, everybody she ever called a friend, in order to prove that to herself. This imbalance in character is kind of what frustrates me about her most. That although the other two characters made sense at least in what they wanted, Abby's does not. Proving you're a good person doesn't have to be that extreme. It doesn't have to be a case of, oh, I saved this kid, but I gotta kill the rest of you in order to do it. Her friends, the people she called family, the people who helped her, sheltered her this whole time. Look at this killing spree she goes on just to prove to herself that she's a good person. Look at what her guilt does to her. Look at what her loss motivates her to do. Ellie's actions might have resulted in some of her friends' deaths, but she wasn't the one who killed them. She didn't swing an axe at their face, she didn't pull a trigger in their face or anything like that. But Abby did that to her comrades. None of the major names, but people who still knew her and cared for her. This by far is the worst. And yeah, I probably got a little angry trying to explain that one. But all this time I've been trying to rack my brain trying to make sense of what she did. And I still don't understand. I don't get why she needed to go to such lengths to prove to herself that she's good. My whole point was to try and analyze her, but I couldn't come up with a reason. A real motivation. Okay. Look, Abby is strong, lethal, capable. God damn, none of her reasoning makes sense to me. And I gotta say, I'm glad I don't have to analyze her anymore. And maybe that's for the best. Maybe they wanted to make her seem morally grey, and that's fine. But it's so frustrating when we're meant to be rooting for this character yet not understand why she does anything. But at least she's got a happy ending. She survives, she gets to ride off in the sunset with Lev, and who knows what becomes of their life now. Like I said, only time will tell. Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching, it means a lot. You have no idea how long it took me to get this video done. It was ridiculous trying to understand everybody in this damn video, especially Abby. I know it's probably going to be asked, so is there anything I disliked about Hellblade? Well, the puzzles were a bit repetitive. Is there anything I liked about The Last of Us? Well, the combat's incredibly intense. Especially Abby's, oh my god, she fucking beats things down in one punch. I want to give a quick shout out to a few YouTubers that gave me a little bit of help trying to understand the concepts behind these characters that I was trying to portray. You will see their links in my description. Please go check them out, they're all incredibly talented. And also you might be wondering what song is playing in the background. That is called The Montage by the one and only Jaxius. Guy is incredibly talented. He made that song just for me and I'm pretty happy with it. It's going to be a future intro, I just need to figure out a few clips to put together. But on that note, thank you for watching and until next time.